Alrighty, looks like you can hear me fairly well. Let's just make sure that, nope, there's no boost. Good. Alright, so I'm currently hiking with my dog. I was just thinking out loud to a degree. I'm going to talk about brute force genome changing. Yeah, we all know what this ultimately, well, if you're watching this video, I'm going to assume that you probably do know a little bit. What's a genome? Well, it's a program that's a multitude of abilities and perks in a video game that work out to making you effectively do this in these biological concepts of your organs and more. So how it's sequenced tells when from the embryonic stage the cell grows and differentiates into the multitude of different organ systems that have to connect. And that's another programming type, both from how to basically break it out as the hash program it is, but also the way it happens to do that as well as it does, and so on. I'm going to move off because I want to talk about brute forcing this, but that's how it works out. Like your organs will form and function with these parameters set up for the cellular network that makes the organ, which, because it's stacked on itself and repeats to certain degrees, it then means it's a multiple polystructural matrix in the world of math, basically. So I'm going to move off, like I said, to perks and abilities, and they're programmed in to do this type of thing for this area, for this group and cluster, to this eventual multiple polystructural matrix called an organ. Now, how they connect, how they do it cellularly, and so on, is what the genome is that you have. And how to brute force this is pretty obviously fairly simple. It's called get a whole bunch of people and measure all the things, quite literally. I know that's super brute force simple, but when I say that, people go like, oh, just the genes, right? No, no, you need to know gut microbiome, you need to know your virome, you need to know the surface biome, right, for your bacteria, and what's in your local area of bacteria and viruses, mold and fungus, and how that, of course, immunologically will influence your gestation in your mother or father, whatever it is, right? Because it could be, well, I have a bag, an artificial womb, and you came out of that. Oh, I don't know if they're allowed to do that, but okay, nice, man, cool. Whatever, Anyways, so I was talking about it because it was like, well, sickle cell sucks, right? But it's like, oh, what we see is not just changes with that, not just changes of, this isn't indirect, for the amount of money, okay? So total amount of money, income of both parents, but how well they seem to do is based upon whether or not they have these spiderweb veins, how well they keep up with their treatment, their food intake, and whether or not it seems like their parents moved around a lot and had different altitude changes, different ingestion of different nutrition, different stresses. And the reason most likely this is the case is because, just like with plants and animals, mold and fungus, environmental influences change how they respond accordingly and proceed forward. So if the one having the kid is ultimately moving around, that gets known as it's forming. Altitude changes for amounts of oxygen, different levels of nutrition, the vibration consistency of walking around. All gets known because back in the day, we were nomadic, or a lot more sedimentary, which means the survivorship bias of our sedimentary lifestyle for women, men, whatever, having kids is a big issue for how to proceed forward. And the reason why I was thinking about this is because it's like, well, it's not across the board. And it's like, that's different perks set up pretty terribly for those that seem to have a higher degree of adaptability as they're forming, but then also after they're out of the womb, they seem to also have degrees of changes to the structure of their blood network, veins and arteries, in their parasympathetic responses in their brain to various possible stimuli of the sickle cell network alongside of bone marrow formation and how well it adapts thanks to needing an adaptability to the given area and environment that they're going to be in. Changing. What that means is the kid comes out, even though they don't know this, being able to form and have more changes happen and occur to their body as they continue to grow until they're fully formed. Now, that's good-ish. Okay? Like with everything, we know statistically that some of them don't get as much help. It's like you have a bad set of abilities and perks. You set this up where you do no damage, and of course you're gonna also do like no healing and all the rest. Okay? So, if you know that, then it's like, well, yeah, no, you might have the your setup sucks. You know what I mean? You have to change your setup. It's like, oh, I can brute force through all these different sickle cells everywhere. Find a couple of them that seem to have this adapted, well, I have a different, vein and artery type that seems to support sickle cell a little bit better as it can go through more. And they have a protein or some other type of thing that exists on the surface of the blood cell that allows them to not clump until a different type of inflammation response occurs, i.e. cut or damage of a different sort, that then makes it so they'll clot. Now, super great, wonderful, right? But, of course, not every one of them lives tremendously. And of all of the sickle cell people, are you sure not one of them has this? Outliers of length of life would need to be looked into. But, of course, that's the other problem of brute forcing. I need to go through a whole bunch of patients. I need to invasively go over their past history before they were even born. I need to go through all of their veins and arteries. I need to see what might be on their blood. I need to know all that, you know what I mean? And then, oh, by the way, I have to compare and contrast their genome, which I have to sequence, to all the other genomes, which I also have to sequence, to understand what leads to where, when, how, and also how it sets itself up, one to the next, to the next, to the next. Such is the problem of the biological technology world. No funding, often, and medications, they seem good enough, I guess. The medications seem, I guess, they're okay. Meanwhile, it's not even a treatment. It doesn't even really, it's better than it didn't have it. Yeah, but I could basically make it non-existent, right? But I'd have to get to you in the womb, or when you come out. I'd have to go through with stem cells, ablate small areas and patches, and slowly update your system and network, both in your bone marrow and your blood and arteries. Veins and arteries. I have to scrub your blood out for a while until this new change of blood happens to come in. But that being said, I'd also be that guy that goes, yeah, but also screw sickle cell, dude. Here's a bunch of O or B or whatever it is that you want. You'll just produce this now, because fuck that shit. Or I'll hybridize it, if I can do that, such that this means they'll less likely clump and be able to go through more easily, which is great. And that's the brute forcing of change. To know, you must gain enough of a basis of data to go this to that to that. And before to these things, this is how it expresses itself, and so on. How it adapts later on. And you can see where and how that can get kind of rough. When sequencing genomes, while much cheaper than before, still expensive. And it takes a while. Although, not nearly as bad as it used to be. Now, we're not talking about certain little mark here. We're talking your entire fucking list of the DNA. All of them. I need to know them all. Everything. I have to do that. Specifically to know how that gut microbiome, how your local area virome and biome and all the rest, how your diet, how all of that, with that as well, influences that. How, as I'm treating you, it's likelier to change. Because, of course, good old other influences you can't control can still pop up. Not so much for the way that you alter that genome, although sometimes there are off-target effects in areas it hits. So, it's what it is. And then there's like, well, I have to do it in your body. And I have to do it specifically this way, because that's the only legal way I can do it. It also means I have to forcefully make it back into a stem cell, which is why I'm going to go into your bone marrow, and this is why I talked about sickle cell. It's like, well, your blood is in there, so, and formed in there, and there's already a bunch of, stem cells that exist around there. So I have to go through the cells that are before that to be able to alter that legally, which is the whole, buzzword problem. It's like, it's legal over here, it's not legal over there. If I flew you over here, I got the right, and then you can do that. I mean, bring you over here, you can't do it over there where you just were, but over here you can do the next stage, and so on. And it'll all be on the up and up. But of course, it's quite expensive. So, yeah. That kind of problem, right? And then it's like, but for what it's worth, everything that makes up your real hardware here, software notwithstanding, because that's both the environment you lived in, what you learned, how you then, proceeded to try and handle the stress and cope with what's in your environment, your thoughts were, what you saw, what was told, and so on. Which is what makes up a large percentage of your personality and ego type and ways of thinking that you have for belief systems, morals and ethics, and culture that also supersedes in some aspects and doesn't in others, that it makes up you kind of thing. Personality of others help make me think, so I therefore make myself. I thought, and then I made myself with this information gleaned from others that also helped make me myself. Right? I think, therefore I am. The standard philosophy thing. Except, someone that's like, I make myself what I am, isn't totally true, as it's both. So, moving off of that part of you still exists. We're talking about helping areas, possibly even in your brain, no longer have certain issues. So, hopefully you don't have Parkinson's. You don't gain Alzheimer's and dementia. You know, maybe you have a reduced severity of certain, say, depressive or psychosis or ADHD possibly, or hey, you're a dicky ass troll bitch, and your personality sucks. You're a psychopath that only forces themselves to feel. You can't have empathy and sympathy somehow. You're too narcissistic to the point where you have a dark malevolent trait, to the point where you become a gabagoo level of person who's highly manipulative. And that's your only way of doing anything because it makes you feel. This is a part of that. So, I'm going to move on. Because, we could do that along with your nerves and heart. Permanent cells can be altered to a degree, although it's build it around and slowly, very small areas, chip away and then put that in there and chip away and put that, and it'll grow and slowly change as it's a seed that will then alter the whole. So that's a thing that you have to concern yourself with because, of course, the expression of the differentiation and the compounds you'd have to use and more, which means, turning a stem cell or a cell into a stem cell, reverting it back. It can undergo during its differentiation a helpful when we're in an embryonic stage, mitosis, and make more, right? Except much like during that, when we were forming, we would eat things from the placenta, right, and have nutrition and more, and then it would keep going until eventually you had a baby. It doesn't just one cell and then suddenly it's there. It has to get things somewhere, somehow, from something. So it breaks things down and turns them into that. That makes it like a lot of women have said, and men too, and others for they, them, and all that they're kind of like parasites. They'll eat you a little bit. However, we don't tend to like to think about it like that, just because that's kind of really mean, to some of them. Others, not at all. This thing's killing me, and it's not even alive in my mind, because it's not really technically. But I'm gonna move on. You can still feel pain and all this other stuff. You eat cows, don't you? We're clearly way above the cows. Okay, you eat venison. You eat baby cows, right? Meanwhile, no, protect all the cows, but that fucking baby. So, I don't know. It's really just dependent quite clearly on the individual person's given amount of stress and anxiety and views and personality and all the rest for ultimately as well as death. Where it's like, no, you shouldn't be fussed by your beliefs. You're so out of sorts to believe that you should try and almost kill yourself to have this kid. Do you see it? Meanwhile, I'm like, yeah, womb. Within a certain amount of time, they're not really even fully consciously aware. They haven't had much of a life. You sure? You don't have anything to keep them alive or in a foster care system that's really going to be there for them. Some do, ultimately, so we can get there. But there's a lot that don't. And there's a lot of stress and strain on our whole system. I don't know, man. It just seems like splitting hairs after a bit. Yeah, but I'm going to move on because that's the genome brute force changing. You want to know what it is? Get a bunch of people, brute force through their genome, see what changes are there, store the data, and know that effectively you're going through all of the different genomes that make up this seems to do this seems to do that. And really, to know more about what that is quite literally just to go, here's a petri dish and here's a bunch of organoids. Run a fuck ton. I'm not kidding. Get a tower of them, run one into the next, into the next, into the next. Creates its own organoid system. much like our bodies, just on a miniature, which you're probably already doing, right? So it's like, do that for all of these things with these already known variable changes that exist as humans right now. Brute force any given this change and this seems to lead and presto changeo, which isn't really that. But hey, it's magic. Yeah, no, it's not physics and science and a lot of fucking learning and engineering and all the rest. No, it's magic. Let's just dumb it down and make it way less than it actually is. Like I didn't do a lot of work. And it's good, right? Especially when it's like I have to store that somewhere. Yeah, but it's like you need to learn how to puzzle piece better. You know what I mean? Like not every single one of those 4 or 5 or 8 or whatever is going to make all. You know what I mean? Like this is a sequence within like this amount total of sequence that is wrong. That leads to all of those things, and that's the piece within inside of the puzzle piece, as in that is a slight miscalculated binary byte or bit that happened to effectively coincide with this whole series of bytes and bits. That means this now should occur and mean this and that to happen and or is referencing the next thing. Okay? That's all how computer programming, binarily speaking, works. You're not much different. Your binary works itself out, breakout style, like my God operating system I talk about often, into making you, which is why I need such a small amount to make the operating system break out into all that it is in every single computer, as it adapts and changes and relates itself to all the different chips, all the different transistors, all the different architecture types and more that exist. Your BIOS goes away. I take that over. All of the binary gets stored elsewhere, but I take over all of that on my God operating system. And for what it's worth, that's kind of what you do. Your embryonic gets broken apart. Hey, what's that over there? Bitch ass placenta. Nom nom nom. Give me that. Now I'm gonna do more. Right? And then it does more and more and more. And then depending on what that might be for the different architecture and transistor types, otherwise, i.e. metaphorically, the environmental stressors and changes that are there that it's saying, hey, this is going on, then alters itself as it grows. Thus begins why it is you take over all of that and alter it to be as best as it can be for you and your starting initial breakout beginning operating system. That's what you are. I modeled my God operating system off of, you guessed it, biology and physics. So there's that. But I'm going to move on because, whatever, really, realistically. But here you go. Yeah, like, you want to brute force everything? It works. It works best in all ways. You literally should never do it otherwise, outside of, I need more funding to be able to do that. Because it's like, well, this seems to mean this. And it's like, yeah, it does a little. Yes, I agree with that. What it means after and what it means before, big deal. Big issues. Because like what's coming from before that leads into this might be severely altered and significantly affect a function elsewhere, which set itself up based upon this existing here. It's not like the programming of a video game where if you alter the perk and ability, like, oh, that's just one area. And it's like, oh, it seemed to do this. But you can see what that is. And you can then change it. And it's not hardcore as fuck. And if you die, you die. That kind of thing. So I'm a big fan of that. But also, I'm a big fan of that caution. Right? So what that tends to mean for me is, well, what was leading to it? And what was leading after? Those are the 3 that you really need to start the process. Like you need the thing you're targeting, You need the thing before it, you need the thing after it. That will mean when you change this, it's a lot less likely any real significant problems will occur. There are likely to be some side effects, but not much. Okay? But eventually we'll get to the point where it doesn't matter what it is, we can change all of it. You will be the one to choose. That's the only actual way to do it. Because no matter what, everything will fight and argue until eventually that happens anyways. A bunch of money will go away, and the economy will no longer be necessary for money. Resources and time invested as everybody works together to have everything that they all really kind of require will happen. It's already heading that way. But for genomes and more, we don't need Elysium. We don't need any of this other really kind of terrible stuff to happen. Dystopian is not what that would look like for a large percentage of us, and the moral and ethical quandary that they try and force propagandize-wise to us in a grooming-like fashion in high school and middle school and sometimes even elementary school, depending on our parents and, of course, the teachers, it then turns into the same kind of thing, unfortunately. Like, it's okay to change our genetics. Like, fact of the matter is, we selectively did this for everything that we literally eat on a daily basis now. If you think about that, it's like, no, for them, okay, sure, we'll do it, but not us, though. We're already somehow perfect. Right? And it's like, we'll get to a point where it's ubiquitous, no matter what. But, you know, we all know that some guy died in a dunk tank. That was, you know, one of those things where you kind of just float around, you don't feel anything, maybe you hallucinate. And the reason why is, well, likely because of what he was experimenting with, / whatever might have gone on with the people he was around, possibly influencing his total level of likelihood of stress and, you know, heart attack or drowning or any of that. So, but suffice it to say, they were a big proponent of, yeah, but all medication is something you can just make yourself. For what it's worth, you can. And it wouldn't even be that difficult, truthfully, to make it as clean and as pure as what they make in pharmacies. And eventually we'll get to a point where we'll just have a different type of reactant style, more or less. You know, like an organoid system of tubes and flasks and so on that output this thing. You input this, you set it up like this, you do this type of thing, and outputs this medicine, even if it's biological. Like the vast majority of our biologics, same thing. So, and that's another thing with our immune system. So this is just sickle cell, right? The immune system is a little bit more complicated, but not entirely so. So what stores the memory of what to attack is transmitted through our parents, right? But instead of just antibodies, those antibodies attach and store that information into cells. I think they're autophages or endocrine system thing, whatever it is, I forgot what it was, but that's effectively what it is. Now, the version of a reverse vaccine is on the works, meaning we're targeting those cells in no way, though, with that. But they're targeting our antibodies to unlearn this and doing it for long enough that it then has a change to the stored memory. Hopefully, that's what they're hoping for. The problem is it's unlikely to do that, and I'm pretty sure they know that. I know that sounds stupid to say, but they're not dumb, and they know that they need funding. So what that means, unfortunately, is because we didn't attack the source of the issue and the antibodies, they'll fight each other. So you'll always need the treatment, which is why they're getting money for it in the first place. They're not that stupid either, the ones that are going to give you money and want to make a return. They think like this. It's a business. So the business is, if I can consistently keep giving you a vaccine that will consistently keep treating you like this, then it will make them more money and make me more money. So win, win, win. Except not really, because you could really kind of technically just more or less destroy your immune system and then alter your stored memory cell stuff, and then allow for your immune system to come back, right? And then effectively during that time and as it builds, you'll be able to do that for a little while, and then it should fully have removed this attack profile of a given anything, basically. Now, it's a little really hardcore, and you have to be in a hospital for quite a while, but, kid versus adult, kid a lot easier. They grow and it stays and sticks. Adult, it's like remission. So you have to, check every so often. Yeah, it's like, no, we don't know. I'm pretty sure, but actually, we do have to check every so often. Yeah, which is treatment and all that. Eventually, you get it later and later and later until eventually you either die or you don't need it really anymore. I think it's so non-concerning that it's really more about the fact that you're drinking a lot and you're eating a bunch of bad for you food. Hey, what happened to this? I was set free from the constraints of my immune system, and now I can eat like shit and drink like a fucking bitch-ass motherfucker who's going through severe depression. You mean an alcoholic? Sure, yeah, whatever, I don't care. Meanwhile, I can see it now. The indirect, and it turns out that this causes you very much. Specifically, but it's direct and not correlative, it's causative, somehow. That this vaccine treatment makes it so you're an alcoholic, and you'll eat poorly as fuck. Sure, bitch. That's what this is. Fucking stupid tabloid level of science. So you see this, they treated them, but now they're all alcoholic. Fucking got the next new Jay Leno. Anyways, but that's kind of how that works. That's like psychology. So it's like, yes, you got this treatment. Yes, you're free, but you need treatment mentally to help you through this. It's like you're a kid again. You need to know, no, hey, I know, great, but actually, remember when you were doing that thing that helped you? Still have to do that. Yeah, you don't have to do it quite nearly as much, except actually you probably should, because that will mean you'll live a lot longer and a lot happier and a lot healthier. So, that kind of thing. And the overbearing weight of this thing, not there anymore. You might have another different overbearing weight of this thing. As that got freed, oh, what about this thing that I was avoiding even thinking about? Oh, God, stress, anxiety. So now we must deal with this. But it's always some more, right? So, when I think, oh, there's no reason, I go, you didn't think about the possibilities. There is a lot more here than you think that you can still treat for. Now, genetics and structures in the brain and so on are not something that fix alcoholism. There's a psychological component. Okay? So, I can help your hardware, and others could too, through this, but still, while I'm not really the biohacker and all that, I'm just an ideas, concept, vision guy. Really good at this. I know a lot of things, and I'm able to piece a lot of things together that work very well. I know how to solve issues extraordinarily well. People usually pay a lot of money for that, but that's only because they got a whole bunch of experience and all these PhDs and everything else. And it's like, yeah, I didn't do that. I just brute forced through that. I solved my own issue. It was like, I can't work in college because I can't fucking do the homework. So I can't focus and really honestly have my own anxiety and stress and other problems. And even with programming, there's genuinely only so much you can do, and the hardware itself has an issue. So, it turned into, Yeah. So I'm just gonna have to try and work on the one thing I can work on. My brain, that's all I've got. Yeah. Like, this helps with all of the body. The body will help with it. And so this feedback loop is if I can only do one, I'm gonna fix as best I can this thing. I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna, come on, do the thing, please. Right? And so it's like same similar story for all of biohacking and biotechnology. Right? Like, I can only work on this. This is all they'll allow for the funding. And then, honestly, I don't know anything about that stuff. And it's like, yes. So we need a bunch of people that know a bunch of things that are very good at those things. So we need a team. We need to get the Manhattan Project of biotechnology. We need to get a bunch of collaborators around the world. We need to get a whole bunch of information. People that understand that the goal will mean more than the cost will take. Instead of like a big bomb, this one's more like immortality. There's no more like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, sickle cell, a lot of our health issues that genuinely hurt us and affect us tremendously for billions and trillions of dollars are no longer there. We might even be able to cross the cosmos with such a lowered risk of cancer and death from aging and so on that as a result, it becomes far more feasible to use conventional non-faster night travel. It would be wonderful. Fusion, donut, go burr. Trillions invested. Meanwhile, could I get like a couple thousand so I can get a beaker finally to make the meds in that you want me to research? No. Fuck you. Fuck you so hard. Fuck you so hard. I'm gonna get into glass blowing specifically for this. I'm not gonna stop. No, see, there you go. You picked up a good skill. That's a hustle right there, dude. You're hustling. Yeah, you got a secondary income stream. Fuck you, bitch. But talking about brute forcing here, because we do have to learn how to brute force. So when I talk about the brute force of this, and we're going to compare and contrast, okay? There are a lot of different systems, all the way down from the small molecules that store and change information based upon their shape and what field and ionic type of influence is going on at any given time, which is how the machinery and programming of our cellular matrices, organs, happens to work. We don't like to think about that, but it's like, think of it like they're a tiny, tiny little nanobot that has stored memory and work as energy, both in the form of heat and possible chemical potential energy, exothermic. Now, of course, over time, things break apart. Stuff comes in our environment, and yeah, the rest is your cells degrade, basically. So, that's the brute force problem, okay? This is the, hey, I'm just going to look at it more like I'm a mechanic, much like any other surgeon. I'll take this out and I'll put this in. And I'll do it really non-invasively, so that way it's less likely to harm you. I'll do it in such a way that it's very unlikely to ever go wrong. Right? And that's good. But until you understand this stuff and how to make it so that way you have the right collection and we make other cellular matrices and organoids with inside of our organs and cells to repair and have their function be repair such that they work off of the expression and changes of that ionic, chemical, and stored memory in both their shape but also their field types, which is the ion, positive, negative, that kind of thing. But that's like shapes of fields too. It's like, look at this. This is a chemical like this. It has this shape and like that. But it's like, that's the orbit. No. The orbit's the electron. The electron only knows another thing over here because there's a field and they talk to each other. So we got to get into quantum physics here to be able to know about that. We need to get quite windy. Right, go with this wave. Don't want the less wind. Anyways, but that's how information is stored. It changes its field shape and potential field shape as it interacts, and that alters itself. That's a stored profile. Okay, that's another type of programming. You can alter that by having other things around or changing it in its own right. Okay? So, if you know about this, it's like, guess who can brute force? Everything about our bodies. Us. Yeah, all of us. Even down to any synthetic. Even down to any chemical. Any, even elemental atom. And if we were able to break apart and sustain in a stable way the parts that make up the subatomic particles here, we'd be able to do it with them too. But that's a eventuality, because we're nowhere near that. But we can certainly give you new cells, because we're definitely near that. We can certainly alter some of your cells to have cells in them. We know that salamanders have algae inside of their cells. They can photosynthesize and live off of that for a while. It helps them. If you know anything about that, then it's like, well, we could do something similar. Correct, as I've stated many times in multiple biotechnology videos later on that are on my YouTube channel. Now, growing a cell, it's pretty easy. Making a cell, actually kind of pretty easy too these days. Altering a cell that we already have, easiest. What if we made it so that way, upon a thing with our immune system trying to attack a cell, instead of breaking down the cell membrane, it injects the repair cell. It's going to consume like the parasite of an embryonic that then happens to break down and alter and reform back into that cell the DNA type and sequence that we have. Right? Much like we already have. We have a protein that does this. Okay? Except we kind of need to do a little bit better of a job. And we need more than just it and its secondary, or I think there's like maybe at most 2 of these proteins that store that information for that DNA when it undergoes mitosis. As a result, it's a lot easier to, instead of I have to rely on these, well, I have a whole thing that's going to do this, right? It's like, no, you're doing the right, yank. No, bad cell, bad mitochondria, bad fuck you, nucleus thing, fuck off. Yeah, give me that waste. Yum, 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 yum. I'm still here. Meanwhile, it'd be wonderful if we could reverse it, you know? But that's our immune system, which we'd have to destroy anyways if we wanted to change it. Just a little. Just we might not honestly need to do it if we could just have that alter and then slowly filter out our cells for a while. But like being on a medicine influences and alters what it thinks is going on. So one of those problems and issues, right, that exist in everything, pros and cons. So it's like, no, I need to be on this. Like, I agree, but it might fuck up this immune thing as it repairs itself. So you have to test that. You know what I mean? That's interactivity. Now, how many of you pharmaceutical companies, for all the glory that you get, happen to do that for everything? So, when a brute force genomes, unfortunately, it turns into we need to brute force how we extract and sequence all of those damn elements in their little wound up, tiny little fucking things that they exist in. That's what this was about. You got to get better engineering a way to do that. All right, suck my dick and balls. Like and subscribe. Hey, share this. Hit that notification. See you later. Bye.